The hotel receptionist wrote on my check-in form, "Pretend you don't speak Arabic. The man who booked your room is watching you from the lobby." I stared at the scribbled message for 3 seconds before forcing my face to stay neutral. My blood went cold as I pretended to read the standard hotel policies while my mind raced. Someone else had booked my room? That was impossible. I'd made the reservation myself through the company portal for this business trip to Dubai. I glanced up casually and caught the receptionist's eye. She was a young Filipina woman with nervous energy radiating from her as she processed my fake American passport. Behind her polite smile, I could see genuine fear. She stamped the document with shaking hands. "Everything appears to be in order, Mr. Davidson," she said in English with a practiced accent. "Your room is on the 14th floor. Elevator banks are to your right." She handed me the key card along with another small piece of paper folded beneath it. I pocketed both without looking at the second note and smiled. "Thank you. Great service here." Behind me, I could hear the soft conversation of other guests checking in, but I fought the urge to turn around and scan the lobby. Instead, I walked toward the elevators like any normal business traveler, pulling my wheeled suitcase with deliberate calm. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, finally allowing myself to breathe. Only then did I unfold the second note. "Room 1427. Use service elevator to get there. Regular elevator is monitored. He has people watching." My hands started shaking as the elevator climbed. Room 1427. I was supposed to be in 1419 according to my company booking. Someone had definitely changed my reservation, moved me to a different room, and was now watching me. But who? And why? I was just a software engineer on a routine client visit to set up a new database system. Nothing special about me or my work. When the doors opened on the 14th floor, I forced myself to walk normally toward room 1419, the one on my original reservation. If someone was monitoring the regular elevators, they'd expect me to go there first. I slid the key card, and nothing happened. Tried it again. Red light. The card was programmed for room 1427, not 1419, which meant whoever changed my reservation had planned this carefully. I stood in the hallway for a moment, looking confused like any normal traveler whose key card wasn't working. Then I walked 8 doors down to 1427, and the card worked perfectly. Green light, soft click, door opened. The room was standard business hotel layout, but something felt wrong immediately. The curtains were already closed despite being mid-afternoon. There was a manila envelope on the bed that hadn't been there when I checked in downstairs 2 minutes ago. Someone had been in this room very recently. I set my suitcase down and opened the envelope with careful movements. Inside were photographs. 8, black and white. Surveillance photos of me taken over the past 3 months, walking into my apartment building in Boston, getting coffee at the Starbucks near my office, at Logan Airport checking in for this flight, at the Dubai airport going through customs. Someone had been following me for months without me knowing. The last photo showed me walking into this hotel lobby 30 minutes ago. At the bottom of the stack was a note written in Arabic. Even though I'd been ordered to pretend I couldn't read it, the words were burned into my brain. "We know who you really are, Agent Khalil. Your cover has been blown for weeks. Cooperate or your family pays the price. Agent Khalil." My real name was David Hassan, and I was a CIA operative working under deep cover for the past 3 years. My mission in Dubai was supposed to be simple intelligence gathering on a suspected arms dealer named Rashid Al-Mansouri. I'd built my cover identity as a software engineer so carefully that even my own agency contacts believed it most of the time. But someone had discovered the truth. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the photos. 3 years of careful work, destroyed. My mind automatically went through the possibilities. Had I slipped up somehow? Made a mistake that revealed my true identity? Or was there a leak inside the agency? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Balcony. 5 minutes. Come alone." I walked to the window and carefully moved the curtain aside. 14 floors below, the pool area was crowded with tourists and business travelers. Normal scene for a Dubai hotel in the afternoon. But my trained eye caught the 3 men positioned around the pool who weren't swimming or drinking. They were watching the building, watching for me. I had 2 choices: follow the instructions and walk into what was probably a trap, or try to run and risk whatever they'd threatened about my family. My sister lived in Phoenix with her 2 kids. My parents were retired in Florida. All of them thought I was a software engineer who traveled occasionally for work. None of them knew about my real job or the dangers that came with it. The balcony door opened easily, and I stepped into the heat of the Dubai afternoon. The man standing there was in his 40s, wearing an expensive suit despite the temperature. He looked like a businessman, but his posture and the way he scanned the surrounding buildings screamed military training. "Agent Hassan," he said in perfect English. "Or do you prefer Khalil? That was your father's name, wasn't it?" I kept my expression neutral. "I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm David Davidson, software engineer from Boston." He smiled without warmth. "Your Arabic is excellent for a software engineer. Native speaker level. Almost like you grew up hearing it at home." He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of my sister coming out of a grocery store in Phoenix with her 6-year-old daughter. The photo was time-stamped 2 hours. Ego. "Beautiful family. It would be unfortunate if something happened to them because of your poor choices." My blood turned to ice. "What do you want?" "Honesty. I represent certain interests that would prefer to avoid unnecessary complications. Your investigation into Mr. Al-Mansouri's business activities has become problematic. I don't know what you're talking about. He swiped to another photo on his phone. This one showed me 3 weeks ago outside Al-Mansouri's office building, taken with a telephoto lens. You've been surveilling our client for 6 months. You've identified 3 of his business associates. You've tracked 2 shipments from Syria to UAE to Somalia. Shall I continue? Each detail he mentioned was classified information that only a handful of people should have known. Either he had access to my mission files, or someone inside CIA was feeding him intelligence. Who are you working for? I asked. People who value privacy and discretion. Mr. Al-Mansouri is a legitimate businessman who's tired of being harassed by American intelligence agencies. He's willing to make this problem disappear if you're reasonable. He put his phone away. Walk away from the investigation. File a report saying you found no evidence of illegal activity. In return, your family remains safe, and you get to continue your software engineer cover story indefinitely. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow's headlines will be about a tragic accident involving a software engineer who fell from his hotel balcony. Your family will grieve for David Davidson, never knowing he was really CIA agent David Hassan, who died because he chose his job over their safety. The threat was clear and immediate, but something about his tone bothered me. He was too confident, too smooth, like he'd done this before with other agents. How many other operatives have you compromised? I asked. He smiled again. You'd be surprised how many of your colleagues have seen reason when their families were threatened. The agency has a remarkable ability to lose track of its people when they become inconvenient. That confirmed my suspicion. This wasn't just about my investigation. There was a systematic effort to neutralize CIA operations in the region by threatening agents' families. I need time to think, I said. 24 hours. Then you give me your answer. During that time, your family will be under close observation. Don't try to contact them or warn them. Don't try to contact your handlers. Just think carefully about what matters most to you. He handed me a business card with only a phone number printed on it. Call when you've decided. And remember, we have people watching everywhere, including inside your own agency. After he left, I sat on the balcony for 20 minutes, trying to figure out my next move. My training said to contact my handler immediately and report the compromise. But if there really was a leak inside CIA, that contact could get my family killed. My personal instincts said to get on the next flight home and try to protect my sister and parents myself. But running would confirm their suspicions and probably make things worse. I needed to think like an operative, not like a terrified brother and son. Back inside the room, I started going through my belongings methodically. If they'd been watching me for months, they might have planted surveillance devices in my luggage. Sure enough, I found a GPS tracker sewn into the lining of my suitcase and a listening device disguised as a pen in my laptop bag. I left both devices in place but disabled them carefully, making it look like normal wear and tear rather than deliberate sabotage. Then I went to work on the hotel room itself. Professional sweep revealed 2 cameras hidden in the light fixtures and a microphone in the bedside lamp. I couldn't disable them without being obvious, so I'd have to assume everything I did was being monitored. At 7 p.m., I went down to the hotel restaurant for dinner, acting like a normal business traveler. The same 3 men from the pool area were now positioned around the restaurant, pretending to read newspapers and check their phones. I ordered room service instead, and went back upstairs, giving them the impression I was staying put for the night. But at 11 p.m., I put my contingency plan into action. I'd spotted the service elevator during my initial reconnaissance of the floor. It required a key card to operate, but hotel security was usually more worried about guests going up than staff going down. I made my way to the stairwell and climbed to the 15th floor, then took the service elevator down to the parking garage. 3 years of CIA training had taught me that the best way out of surveillance was through areas the watchers weren't expecting you to use. The garage was dimly lit and mostly empty at this hour. I found an exit that led to a side street away from the main hotel entrance. No watchers visible, but I stayed in the shadows anyway. My destination was an internet cafe 6 blocks away that stayed open 24 hours. I needed to research Rashid Al-Mansouri more carefully and try to figure out who was protecting him. The cafe was filled with migrant workers sending money home and teenagers playing online games. Perfect cover for what I needed to do. I paid cash for 2 hours of computer time and started digging. Al-Mansouri's business empire was more complex than I'd realized. He had legitimate companies mixed with shell corporations spread across a dozen countries. Following the money trail led to weapons shipments, but also to humanitarian aid organizations and infrastructure projects. Someone was using his network for both legal and illegal purposes, making it nearly impossible to distinguish between legitimate business and arms dealing. Then I found something interesting. 3 other CIA operatives had been investigating different aspects of Al-Mansouri's network over the past 2 years. All 3 had filed reports concluding there was no evidence of illegal activity. All 3 had requested immediate transfer to different assignments. The pattern was clear. Each agent had been compromised and forced to abandon their investigation, but I needed to know if they'd been threatened or if there was another explanation. I accessed a secure CIA database through an encrypted connection and pulled their personnel files. Agent Martinez had reported a family emergency and requested immediate stateside assignment. Agent Chen had cited health concerns and taken early retirement. Agent Williams had transferred to the Counterterrorism Division in Washington. All three moves looked reasonable on paper, but the timing was suspicious. Each agent had made their request within days of getting close to evidence against al-Mansouri. I was about to dig deeper when my phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. You missed curfew. Your family is now at higher risk. Return to your room immediately. They were tracking my movements in real time, even though I'd disabled their devices, which meant they had additional surveillance I hadn't detected. Or they had help from someone with access to Dubai's extensive security camera network. I logged off the computer and paid the cafe owner, then walked back to the hotel using a different route. The same three men were waiting in the lobby, but they didn't acknowledge me as I passed. Professional courtesy between predator and prey. Back in room 1427, I found another envelope on my bed. Inside was a single photograph of my sister's house in Phoenix, with all the lights on and 2 cars parked in the driveway that didn't belong to her. The message was clear. They had people in position. One phone call and my family would disappear. I sat on the bed and forced myself to think strategically. These people had compromised at least 4 CIA operatives, maybe more. They had extensive surveillance capabilities and international reach, but they were also taking enormous risks by threatening American intelligence agents. That suggested desperation or extremely high stakes. Whatever al-Mansouri was really doing, it was important enough to risk war with the CIA. I needed to find out what that was before making any decisions about cooperation. At 3 a.m., I implemented phase 2 of my escape plan. I'd noticed that the hotel's fire suppression system included motion sensors in the hallways that would trigger if someone moved too quickly. But there was a blind spot near the emergency stairwell that lasted about 15 seconds. I used a small device from my kit to trigger the fire alarm on the 12th floor, causing enough distraction to slip past the motion sensors and reach the stairwell. This time I went up instead of down, climbing to the roof access. Dubai's skyline at night was spectacular, but I wasn't sightseeing. I was looking for the surveillance vehicles positioned around the hotel. From 20 floors up, I could spot at least 6 cars with occupants who weren't moving like normal travelers. They had the building completely surrounded, but they'd made one mistake. All their attention was focused on ground-level exits and the main elevator banks. None of them were watching the adjacent building, which had a maintenance ladder system connecting to the hotel's roof. It took me 40 minutes to cross between buildings and climb down the maintenance ladder to street level 3 blocks away. By then, the fire department had arrived to investigate the false alarm, providing perfect cover for one more person moving around the area. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver an address in the old quarter of Dubai, far from the modern business district where my hotel was located. I needed to disappear completely for at least 12 hours while I figured out my next move. The safe house was a small apartment I'd rented under a different identity when I first arrived in Dubai 3 months ago. Standard CIA protocol was to maintain multiple identities and safe locations, but I'd never expected to need them for an operation like this. The apartment was sparse but functional. More importantly, it had a secure communication system that bypassed normal channels. I spent an hour setting up encrypted connections before reaching out to my handler through a back channel that only 3 people in the agency knew about. The response came back within 20 minutes. Your mission has been compromised. Abort immediately and await extraction. But something about the message bothered me. The phrasing was too formal, too bureaucratic. My handler, Sarah Chen, always included a personal sign-off in her messages. This one didn't have it. Either she was being monitored, or someone else was using her access codes. I sent back a coded message that only Sarah would understand. Remember what you told me about your sister's wedding last month? If it was really Sarah, she'd know we'd never discussed her sister's wedding because she was an only child. The response came back 2 hours later. Extraction team inbound. Rendezvous at Marina Pier 7 at 0800 tomorrow. No answer to my question about the sister's wedding. Confirmation that someone else was using Sarah's communication access, which meant the leak inside CIA was real and went higher up the chain than I'd thought. I was now completely on my own with no backup and no extraction coming. But I also had an advantage my enemies didn't know about. They thought I was a typical field operative following standard protocols. They didn't know I'd spent 2 years before CIA training as a deep cover asset in Lebanon, learning to operate without any agency support. I could survive in hostile territory indefinitely if necessary. Over the next 6 hours, I used the apartment's resources to dive deeper into al-Mansouri's network. The breakthrough came when I traced a series of financial transactions from his Dubai companies to a shipping manifest for a cargo vessel currently in international waters between Dubai and Somalia. The ship was carrying 30 shipping containers listed as humanitarian aid supplies, but the tonnage was wrong. Each container weighed 3 times what medical supplies should weigh, and the delivery schedule had them arriving in Mogadishu the same week as a major political summit where African leaders would be discussing new treaties with the United States. Arms dealers don't usually care about political summits unless they're planning to influence the outcome. I cross-referenced the ship's route with CIA intelligence about planned terrorist activities in Somalia and found the connection. The weapons weren't being sold to random buyers. They were being positioned to assassinate 3 African presidents who'd been cooperating with American counterterrorism efforts. Al-Mansouri wasn't just an arms dealer. He was facilitating a coordinated attack designed to destabilize the entire region and destroy American influence in East Africa. That level of operation required more than just money. It required protection from within the intelligence community and advanced knowledge of security arrangements for the summit. Someone inside CIA wasn't just leaking information about individual agents. They were providing operational intelligence for a massive terrorist plot. I now understood why they were so desperate to shut down my investigation and why they'd compromised multiple agents. I'd stumbled onto something that went far beyond arms dealing into international terrorism and treason. At 6 a.m., my phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. Your time is up. Meet us at the Marina Pier 7 at 8 a.m. for your final answer. Come alone, or your family dies today. They were using the same location as the fake extraction message, which confirmed they were monitoring my communications with CIA. I had 1 hour to decide between saving my family and stopping a terrorist attack that could kill hundreds of people. But first, I needed to get my evidence to someone I could trust. The problem was figuring out who that might be when the leak went deep enough to compromise extraction teams and handler communications. I spent 30 minutes uploading everything I'd discovered to a secure server that only I could access, then created a dead man's switch that would automatically release the information to multiple news organizations and foreign intelligence services if I didn't check in every 24 hours. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than letting the evidence die with me. Then I walked to the marina to meet my fate. Pier 7 was at the far end of the marina, isolated from the main yacht club activities. Perfect place for a quiet conversation or a quiet murder. I arrived 15 minutes early and positioned myself where I could watch for both the promised extraction team and al-Mansouri's people. At exactly 8 a.m., a black sedan pulled up to the pier. The same man from the hotel balcony got out, along with 2 associates who looked like professional muscle. No sign of any CIA extraction team, which confirmed my suspicions about compromised communications. Agent Hassan, the man called out as I walked toward them. I trust you've had time to consider our offer. I have a counter-proposal, I said, stopping 20 feet away. You tell me who inside CIA is feeding you information, and I'll consider walking away from al-Mansouri. He laughed. You're hardly in a position to negotiate. Your family is being watched by your people, yes. But here's what you don't know. I've documented everything about al-Mansouri's weapons shipments to Somalia and the planned assassination of 3 African presidents. That information is currently sitting on a server with a dead man's switch. If anything happens to me or my family, everything gets released to the world. His confident expression faltered slightly. You're bluffing. Call my sister right now. Ask your people watching her house to check her phone. 30 minutes ago, she received a text with detailed instructions about what to do if she doesn't hear from me by noon today. Those instructions include contacting CNN, the Washington Post, and the FBI with information I've given her about this operation. I was lying about contacting my sister, but he didn't know that, and the threat was real enough to make him hesitate. Even if that's true, he said after a moment, we still have your family. You release that information, they die anyway. Maybe, but then you lose your leverage over me and gain nothing. Better to negotiate while we both have something the other wants. One of his associates whispered something in his ear. The man nodded and pulled out his phone, making a call in Arabic that I pretended not to understand. He was reporting to someone higher up the chain, asking for instructions on how to handle this new development. After 5 minutes, he hung up and turned back to me. My employer is willing to discuss terms, but not here. Too exposed. He gestured toward a yacht moored at the end of the pier. We'll continue this conversation somewhere more private. Every instinct told me this was a trap. Getting on that yacht meant giving up any chance of escape and putting myself completely at their mercy. But I also knew that staying here meant watching them kill my family from a distance. I followed them onto the yacht, noting the positions of the crew members and looking for anything I could use as a weapon if things went wrong. The main cabin was luxuriously appointed with expensive furniture and artwork. Sitting at the head of a polished conference table was Rashid al-Mansouri himself. I recognized him from surveillance photos, but in person, he was more impressive. Mid-50s, silver hair, wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than my annual salary. He gestured for me to sit across from him while his associates positioned themselves at the exits. Agent Hassan, he said in accented English, you've caused me considerable inconvenience. That's what I'm paid for. Yes, but perhaps we can reach an understanding that serves both our interests. You want your family safe. I want to continue my business without interference. These goals are not incompatible. He opened a laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a live video feed of my sister's house. I could see her moving around the kitchen, making breakfast for her kids, completely unaware that armed men were watching her every move. Your sister is a pediatric nurse, al-Mansouri continued. Very noble profession. Her children are 6 and 8 years old, honor students, both of them. It would be tragic if something happened to such a lovely family. Get to the point. The point is that you have information I need suppressed, and I have resources you need to protect your family. A simple exchange. He closed the laptop. Walk away from your investigation. File a report stating you found no evidence of illegal activity. In return, your family remains safe, and you get a substantial financial reward for your cooperation. How substantial? $5 million deposited in an account of your choosing. Enough to retire from CIA and provide for your family's future without ever worrying about money again. It was a generous offer, but I knew it came with strings attached. And if I refuse, then your family dies today, and you join them shortly afterward. Your deaths will look like a tragic accident. CIA will assume you were killed by hostile forces while investigating arms dealers. Very unfortunate, but these things happen in our line of work. I pretended to consider the offer while actually studying the yacht's layout and looking for escape routes. Through the windows, I could see we were moving away from the marina toward open water. Soon we'd be far enough out that nobody would hear gunshots or see bodies being thrown overboard. There's one problem with your offer, I said finally. What's that? You're not just an arms dealer. You're facilitating a terrorist attack on 3 African presidents. That makes you an enemy of the United States, and I took an oath to defend my country against enemies both foreign and domestic. Al-Mansouri's expression hardened. Your patriotism is admirable but misguided. The African leaders I'm targeting are corrupt dictators who've stolen billions from their people. Their deaths will bring stability to the region. By replacing them with leaders who'll cooperate with your business interests. Business is the foundation of stability. When people can make money, they don't start wars. I shook my head. You're not bringing stability. You're bringing chaos so you can profit from it. And you're using compromised CIA agents to help you do it. Compromised is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of them as enlightened. They recognize that ideology is less important than results. He leaned forward. I'm offering you the same enlightenment. Walk away from this fantasy of saving the world and focus on saving your family. I stood up from the table. I need to make a phone call. To whom? To the person who's been feeding you CIA intelligence. I want to know who sold out my agency before I decide whether to join them. Al-Mansouri smiled. That can be arranged. He pressed a button on his phone and spoke briefly in Arabic. A few minutes later, the cabin door opened and someone walked in who made my blood freeze. Sarah Chen, my handler, the woman I'd trusted with my life for 3 years. She wouldn't meet my eyes as she sat down next to Al-Mansouri. Hello, David. How long? I asked. How long have you been working for him? 2 years. Since my mother was diagnosed with cancer and couldn't afford treatment. He offered to help with medical bills in exchange for occasional information. Occasional information? Sarah, you've gotten at least 4 agents compromised. You've facilitated arms dealing and terrorist plots. I never intended for it to go this far. He said he just needed to know when agents were getting close so he could move his operations. I didn't know about the assassinations until recently. She finally looked at me, and I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. I'm sorry, David. I tried to protect you by ordering you to abort the mission, but you wouldn't listen. Because I knew someone was compromised. I just didn't know it was you, Al-Mansouri interrupted. Touching reunion, but we have business to conclude. Agent Hassan, now that you understand the situation completely, what is your decision? I looked at Sarah, then at Al-Mansouri, then at the laptop screen showing my sister's house. Everything I'd worked for over the past 3 years, every principle I'd sworn to uphold, balanced against the lives of the 3 people I loved most in the world. I need guarantees, I said finally. If I walk away and file a false report, how do I know you won't kill my family anyway to eliminate witnesses? You have my word. The word of a terrorist and arms dealer? That's not very reassuring. Al-Mansouri's patience was clearly wearing thin. What do you propose? I want my family moved to a safe location under protection that I can verify. Not your people, not CIA, but private security that answers only to me. Once they're safe, I'll file whatever report you want. And the information you claim to have uploaded to a server gets deleted after I confirm my family is secure and the African summit ends without incident. No assassinations, no terrorist attacks. You can continue your arms dealing business, but the mass murder stops here. It was a desperate gambit, but I was buying time while formulating a real plan. Al-Mansouri and Sarah exchanged glances. Acceptable, he said after a moment. We'll arrange for your family's relocation immediately. You have 24 hours to delete your files and file your report. I'll need to confirm their safety personally before I do anything. Of course, Sarah will accompany you to ensure there are no misunderstandings. The yacht was turning back toward the marina. Within an hour, I'd be back on land with a chance to escape, but I'd also committed to helping cover up a terrorist plot and betraying everything I'd sworn to protect, unless I could find a way to honor the letter of my agreement while violating its spirit. Back at the marina, Al-Mansouri's people drove me to a different hotel while Sarah sat beside me in the back seat. We didn't speak during the ride, but I could feel her watching me for any sign that I was planning something other than compliance. The new hotel was more isolated, with fewer people around and better security for monitoring my movements. My room was on the 20th floor with a view of the desert instead of the city. No balcony this time, and I noticed the windows didn't open. They were taking no chances on my escape. Sarah came to my room an hour later carrying a secure phone. Your sister's on the line, she said. To confirm she's safe, I took the phone with shaking hands. Lisa? David? Oh my God, what's happening? These men came to the house and said there was a terrorist threat and we needed protective custody. They won't tell me anything except that you're okay and working with the government to keep us safe. Are you hurt? Are the kids okay? We're fine but scared. They brought us to some kind of facility with armed guards. David, what's really going on? I looked at Sarah, who nodded. I can't explain everything over the phone, but you're in danger because of my work. These people are protecting you until I can finish handling the threat. Just do what they say and everything will be okay. When can we come home? Soon. Maybe a few days. I love you, Lisa. Kiss the kids for me. I handed the phone back to Sarah, my heart breaking at the fear in my sister's voice. They're really safe? For now. As long as you cooperate, they'll remain in protective custody until this is over. And if I don't cooperate, then their protective custody becomes something else entirely. Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could see the guilt in her expression. David, I know you hate me right now, but I'm trying to minimize the damage. Al-Mansouri could have just killed all of you. This way, everyone gets to live if you're smart about it. I spent the rest of the day in the hotel room, supposedly working on deleting my files and preparing a false report. But actually, I was planning the most desperate operation of my career. I had to find a way to save my family, stop the terrorist attack, and expose the CIA leak without getting everyone killed in the process. The key was the timing. The African summit wasn't for another 4 days, which meant al-Mansouri's weapons shipment hadn't reached Somalia yet. If I could find a way to intercept or delay that shipment, the assassination plot would fail even. If I filed a false report clearing al-Mansouri of wrongdoing, but I needed help, and the only person I could trust was someone outside both CIA and al-Mansouri's network. I thought about Marcus Rodriguez, a former Navy SEAL who'd left the military to start a private security company. We'd worked together on 2 previous operations, and I knew he could be trusted. More importantly, his company had resources in East Africa that could help intercept weapons shipments. The problem was contacting him without al-Mansouri's people knowing about it. They were monitoring my communications and probably had the room bugged. I needed to get a message out through channels they weren't watching. At 10 p.m., I triggered the hotel's fire alarm by shorting out an electrical outlet in the bathroom. During the evacuation, I slipped away from Sarah and al-Mansouri's security team in the chaos of guests flooding the stairwells. I had maybe 10 minutes before they realized I was missing and started searching. The hotel's business center was locked, but my CIA lockpicking skills got me inside within 30 seconds. I accessed one of the computers and sent a coded message to Marcus through a gaming forum we'd used for previous covert communications. The message looked like a discussion about strategy in an online war game, but Marcus would recognize the specific phrases as a request for urgent assistance. I managed to delete the browser history and get back to the evacuation area before Sarah noticed I was gone. She gave me a suspicious look, but didn't say anything as we all returned to our rooms. The response from Marcus came 12 hours later through the same gaming forum. He'd understood my coded message and confirmed that his team could intercept the weapons shipment if I could provide specific details about the cargo vessel's route and timing. But he needed 48 hours to position his people and get the necessary equipment. I spent the next day walking a careful line between appearing cooperative while secretly gathering the intelligence Marcus needed. During a meeting with al-Mansouri to review my progress on the false report, I managed to photograph shipping documents that showed the vessel's current position and projected arrival time in Mogadishu. That evening, Sarah came to my room with an update on my family. "They're asking questions," she said. "Your sister wants to know why they can't contact anyone outside the facility. She's starting to get suspicious." "What did you tell her?" "That it's for security reasons, but she's not buying it. Her kids are asking about school and friends. The longer this goes on, the harder it becomes to maintain the fiction that they're in protective custody." I could hear the strain in Sarah's voice. Whatever moral compromises she'd made to work with al-Mansouri, she hadn't completely lost her humanity. "There's something else," she continued. "Al-Mansouri's getting impatient. He wants your final report filed tomorrow. Not in 2 days as originally planned. The African summit timeline has been moved up." My heart sank. Marcus needed 48 hours, but I only had 24. The weapons shipment would reach Somalia before his team could intercept it. Why the change in timeline? Political pressure. The African leaders want to conclude their agreements before some kind of economic summit in Geneva. Everything's accelerated, which meant I had to choose between filing the false report to save my family or finding another way to stop the assassinations. I spent that night working on both problems simultaneously. I completed a detailed report clearing al-Mansouri of any illegal activities while secretly sending Marcus updated intelligence about the accelerated timeline. His response was not encouraging. "Can attempt intercept with current timeline, but success probability less than 40%. Need more time or different approach." A different approach. I started thinking about alternatives to intercepting the weapons shipment. What if I could delay the African summit itself, or warn the targeted leaders without exposing my family to retaliation? At 6 a.m., I made a decision that went against every instinct for self-preservation I'd developed over 3 years of undercover work. I called the number al-Mansouri had given me and requested an immediate meeting. Sarah arrived at my room 30 minutes later looking worried. "David, what are you doing? You're supposed to file your report today, not schedule more meetings. I'm going to offer him a better deal, something that gives him what he wants without requiring mass murder. He's not going to negotiate. The weapons shipment is already in motion. The assassination teams are in position. This is bigger than just al-Mansouri now. Then help me stop it. You still have access to CIA resources. You could warn the African leaders anonymously." Sarah shook her head. "Any warning that specific would be traced back to our investigation. Al-Mansouri would know you leaked it, and your family would be dead within hours. So you're just going to let 3 presidents be murdered? I'm going to keep your family alive, which is more than I can do for those presidents at this point." The ride to al-Mansouri's compound was silent. I knew I was walking into a situation where I had almost no leverage and very few options. But I also knew that filing a false report and walking away wasn't something I could live with, even if it meant saving my family. Al-Mansouri's compound was a fortress disguised as a luxury estate 30 kilometers outside Dubai. High walls, armed guards at multiple checkpoints, and surveillance cameras covering every angle. The kind of place where people disappeared without anyone asking questions. Inside the main building, Al-Mansouri was waiting in what looked like a boardroom, complete with a conference table and wall-mounted screens showing financial data and shipping routes. 3 other men sat around the table, all of them radiating the kind of quiet menace that came from years of violence. "Agent Hassan," Al-Mansouri said without getting up, "I understand you have a proposal that couldn't wait for your report. I want to modify our agreement. Instead of filing a false report, I provide you with something more valuable, such as complete intelligence on CIA operations in the Middle East, names of assets, details of ongoing investigations, locations of safe houses, everything I've learned in 3 years of deep cover work." The room went silent. Sarah looked shocked, but I could see her trying to figure out if I was serious or playing some kind of angle. Al-Mansouri leaned back in his chair, studying my face for signs of deception. "That would certainly be valuable," he said slowly, "but it would also make you a traitor to your country. Are you prepared for those consequences?" "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to keep my family safe. A false report clears you of one investigation. Real intelligence protects you from future investigations. And in return, you call off the assassinations. Find another way to achieve your political goals that doesn't involve mass murder." One of the other men laughed harshly and said something in Arabic that I pretended not to understand. He was telling Al-Mansouri this was obviously a trap, that no CIA agent would turn traitor so easily. Al-Mansouri silenced him with a gesture. "Your colleague raises a good point. This conversion seems remarkably sudden. Yesterday you were threatening to expose our operation. Today you're offering to betray your entire agency. Yesterday I thought I had options. Today I realize my family's safety is the only thing that matters." I let genuine emotion enter my voice. "I've spent 3 years lying to everyone I care about, pretending to be someone else, risking my life for people who see me as expendable. When you threatened my sister and her kids, it made me realize what's actually important." "Prove it," Al-Mansouri said. "Give me something now. Something I can verify immediately." I pulled out my phone and opened an encrypted file. "CIA has an asset inside the UAE Ministry of Defense. Codename Desert Rose. Real name is Colonel Amara Khalil. She's been providing intelligence on weapons purchases for the past 18 months. Al-Mansouri's eyebrows went up. He made a phone call in Arabic and spoke rapidly for several minutes. When he hung up, he was smiling. "Colonel Khalil is indeed in a position to provide such intelligence. How did CIA recruit her?" "Financial pressure. Her daughter needed expensive medical treatment in London. CIA arranged payment and ongoing support in exchange for information. It was all true, and Al-Mansouri would be able to verify every detail within hours. I was burning a valuable asset to establish my credibility, but it was the only way to get close enough to stop the assassinations." "Interesting," Al-Mansouri said. "What else can you tell me?" "Not here. Too many people. Too much risk. If I'm going to commit treason, I want guarantees about how the information will be used and protected." "What kind of guarantees?" "First, my family gets relocated to a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. New identities, permanent protection, enough money to live comfortably forever. Reasonable. Second, the African assassinations are called off permanently. You find another way to achieve your political objectives. Also reasonable, assuming the intelligence you provide is valuable enough. Third, Sarah gets immunity. She cooperated under duress because of her mother's medical bills. Once this is over, she disappears and never works for either side again." Sarah looked surprised, but Al-Mansouri just nodded. "Anything else?" "I want to see the intelligence you have on CIA operations. If I'm going to provide you with information, I need to know what you already know, so I don't waste time telling you things you've already learned from other sources." Al-Mansouri exchanged glances with his associates. "That would require a considerable degree of trust." "Yes, it would. But if we're going to work together, we need to trust each other. Otherwise, this partnership fails, and everyone loses." After a long pause, Al-Mansouri stood up. "Very well. Sarah will arrange for your family's relocation while you and I discuss the details of our new arrangement. But understand this, Agent Hassan. If you're playing some kind of game, if this is an elaborate trap, your family will suffer consequences beyond your imagination." "I understand." "Good. We'll continue this conversation tonight at a more secure location. Sarah will provide you with the details." As we left the compound, Sarah grabbed my arm in the parking lot. "David, what the hell are you doing? You can't seriously be considering betraying CIA. I'm considering doing whatever it takes to keep my family alive. This is insane. Even if you give him intelligence, he'll kill you anyway once he doesn't need you anymore. And then he'll kill your family to eliminate witnesses. Maybe, but at least they'll be alive long enough for me to find another solution." She stared at me for a long moment. "You have a plan, don't you? This isn't really surrender. I have the beginning of a plan, but it requires Al-Mansouri to trust me enough to show me his entire operation. Once I know where the weapons are being stored, how the assassination teams are being coordinated, who else is involved, then I can figure out how to stop it. And if you can't, then I buy time until Marcus's team can intercept the weapons shipment, or until CIA figures out there's a leak and starts investigating." We drove back to the hotel in silence, both of us knowing that my plan was desperately thin and relied on too many variables beyond my control. That evening, Al-Mansouri's people picked me up in an armored Mercedes and drove me to another location. This one even more secure than the compound. It was an office building in Dubai's financial district that looked ordinary from the outside, but had security measures that rivaled most government facilities. The 20th floor was entirely occupied by Al-Mansouri's organization, with computer servers, communication equipment, and wall-mounted displays showing real-time tracking of cargo ships around the world. It was the nerve center of an operation much larger than I'd realized. "Impressive, isn't it?" Al-Mansouri said as he led me through the facility. "We coordinate legitimate business activities for dozens of companies across 3 continents. The weapons trading is actually a relatively small part of our revenue. Then why risk it? Why not stick to legitimate business? Because sometimes political change requires more persuasive tools than money alone. The African leaders we're targeting have been interfering with legitimate business development in their regions. Their removal will benefit everyone." He showed me into a conference room where 3 large screens displayed detailed information about CIA operations. Names, photos, mission summaries, financial records, everything my agency thought was classified. "This is what we know about your colleagues," Al-Mansouri said. "As you can see, we're quite well informed." I studied the displays, recognizing agents I'd worked with and operations I'd heard about through official channels. But there were also details that could only have come from someone with access to the highest levels of CIA leadership. "How long have you been getting this information?" I asked. 2 years from Sarah, but we had other sources before her." "Other sources?" "Let's just say that CIA isn't as secure as its agents believe. We have people in positions where they can access almost anything we need." The scope of the penetration was staggering. Al-Mansouri's organization had real-time access to CIA personnel files, mission planning documents, even communications between field agents and their handlers. No wonder they'd been able to compromise multiple investigations and stay ahead of any attempts to shut them down. "Now," Al-Mansouri said, "show me what you can add to our collection." I spent the next 2 hours providing detailed intelligence about CIA operations in the Middle East. Asset locations, planned missions, security protocols, everything I could remember from 3 years of briefings and field experience. Al-Mansouri's people took notes and cross-referenced my information against what they already knew, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. It was the most comprehensive intelligence briefing I'd ever given, and I was providing it to America's enemies. But every piece of information I shared also gave me insight into how Al-Mansouri's organization operated and where their vulnerabilities might be. By midnight, I'd identified at least 3 points where the weapons shipment could be intercepted and 2 ways to disrupt their communication with the assassination teams in Somalia. The key was getting access to their secure communication system for just 10 minutes. "Excellent work," Al-Mansouri said as we concluded the session. "Your information fills several gaps in our intelligence picture. I think we can do business together." "What about the assassinations? What about them?" "Our agreement was that you'd call them off in exchange for my cooperation." Al-Mansouri smiled coldly. "Our agreement was that I'd consider calling them off if your intelligence proved valuable. It has, but not valuable enough to abandon an operation 2 years in the planning." My blood went cold. "Then what was the point of this exercise?" "The point was to test your sincerity and extract useful intelligence. Both objectives have been accomplished." "And my family?" "Will remain safe as long as you continue to cooperate. But the African operation proceeds as planned." I'd been played. Al-Mansouri had never intended to call off the assassinations. He'd used my concern for my family to extract valuable intelligence while giving me nothing in return except empty promises. "You're making a mistake," I said. "CIA will eventually track down your sources and shut down your operation. When that happens, you'll need friends in American intelligence, not enemies. Perhaps, but by then, the political situation in Africa will have changed in ways that benefit our long-term interests. The short-term intelligence you've provided will help us maintain our operations until the transition is complete." He gestured toward his security team. "Escort Agent Hassan back to his hotel. He'll need to file his false report first thing tomorrow morning." During the ride back to the hotel, I realized my plan had failed completely. I'd burned valuable CIA assets, betrayed my country's secrets, and gained nothing except confirmation that Al-Mansouri was even more ruthless than I'd thought. My family was still in danger, the assassinations were still planned, and I was now a traitor to my own agency. But I'd also learned something Al-Mansouri didn't know I'd learned: the location of his communication center and the timing of his next contact with the assassination teams. In 18 hours, he'd be sending final confirmation and target details to his people in Somalia. If I could disrupt that communication, the assassination teams would be operating blind. Back in my hotel room, I found a message from Marcus through our gaming forum channel. His team had reached the intercept position, but the cargo ship had changed course, probably in response to increased naval patrols in the area. They could still attempt an intercept, but it would require moving into territorial waters where they might face military opposition. I sent back a coded response explaining the communication center location and asking if his team had any capabilities for electronic warfare or cyber attacks. His reply was encouraging. One of his team members was a former NSA operative who specialized in disrupting hostile communications, but they'd need someone on the inside to provide access to the communication center. Someone willing to commit what would amount to a suicide mission, since there was no realistic chance of escape once al-Mansouri realized his operation had been compromised. I spent the rest of the night preparing for what I knew would be my last mission as a CIA operative. I wrote detailed reports about everything I'd learned, including the extent of the intelligence leak and the identities of compromised agents. I uploaded everything to my secure server with instructions to release it automatically if I didn't check in within 72 hours. Then I wrote letters to my family explaining what had really happened and why I'd made the choices I'd made. Letters they'd probably never receive, but that helped me organize my thoughts and find some peace with what I was about to do. At 6 a.m., I called Sarah and told her I needed to return to the communication center to provide additional intelligence that I'd remembered overnight. She was suspicious, but agreed to arrange transportation, probably because she thought I was truly committed to cooperating with al-Mansouri. The building security was lighter during the day shift, with fewer guards and more legitimate business activity to provide cover for unusual movements. I made it to the 20th floor without incident, telling the receptionist I had a scheduled follow-up meeting with al-Mansouri. She waved me through to the conference room where I'd been briefed the night before. The communication center was 2 doors down the hall, behind a security door that required a keycard to access. During my tour the previous evening, I'd noticed that one of al-Mansouri's technical staff had left his keycard on his desk while stepping out for coffee. It was still there when I walked past his workstation. The communication center contained banks of computers and satellite communication equipment worth millions of dollars. More importantly, it contained the secure terminals that al-Mansouri's organization used to coordinate operations worldwide. I had about 10 minutes before someone realized I wasn't supposed to be there. I accessed the terminal that handled African operations and found the scheduled communication with the assassination teams. The message was already prepared, waiting to be transmitted in 6 hours. It contained detailed information about the target locations, security arrangements, and escape routes. I couldn't delete the message without leaving obvious traces of sabotage, but I could modify it in ways that would confuse the assassination teams and make their mission impossible to complete successfully. I changed the target locations, altered the timing of the attacks, and corrupted the escape route information. Any team following these instructions would arrive at the wrong places, at the wrong times, and have no way to get out safely. Then I accessed the system that tracked the weapons shipment and modified the cargo ship's reported position, sending it 20 nautical miles south of its actual location. That would give Marcus's team a better chance of intercepting it before it reached Somali waters. I was uploading everything to my secure server when the door opened behind me. Al-Mansouri walked in with 2 armed guards, his face dark with fury. "Agent Hassan, you disappoint me. I'm just providing additional intelligence, as requested. You're sabotaging my operation. Did you really think we wouldn't notice someone accessing our most secure systems?" He gestured to the guards, who moved to block the exit. "The question now is whether this was a desperate attempt to stop the assassinations or a more sophisticated operation by your agency. CIA doesn't know I'm here. This is personal. Perhaps. But it doesn't matter. The result is the same. You've forced me to accelerate our timeline and take additional security measures." He pulled out his phone and made a brief call in Arabic. When he hung up, he was smiling again. "Your family's protection has just been terminated. My people in Phoenix have their new instructions." My heart stopped. "You said they'd be safe as long as I cooperated. You stopped cooperating the moment you walked into this room. But don't worry, Agent Hassan. You'll be joining them shortly." The guards raised their weapons, but before they could fire, an explosion shook the building. Emergency alarms started blaring, and the lights flickered. Through the windows, I could see smoke rising from the parking garage 20 floors below. Al-Mansouri shouted into his phone, demanding to know what was happening. One of the guards spoke rapidly into his radio, trying to get a status report from building security. In the confusion, I dove behind a bank of servers and crawled toward a maintenance panel I'd noticed earlier. The panel provided access to the building's network cables and power systems. If I could cause enough damage to the communication systems, it might buy Marcus's team additional time to intercept the weapons shipment. More explosions echoed through the building, and I realized this wasn't just a random attack. Someone was systematically targeting the building's infrastructure. Marcus's team must have decided that disabling al-Mansouri's communication center was worth the risk of a direct assault. I ripped out handfuls of network cables and yanked power connections loose from the servers. Sparks flew and several monitors went dark. The secure communication systems that al-Mansouri's organization relied on were going offline one by one. "Stop him!" al-Mansouri shouted, but his guards were more concerned about the explosions than about one man with a handful of cables. The building's fire suppression system activated, filling the room with chemical foam that made it hard to see or breathe. Through the chaos, I heard al-Mansouri screaming into his phone about evacuating the facility and moving to the backup command center. Then the lights went out completely as the building's main power systems failed. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows, and the communication center looked like a war zone. Destroyed equipment, chemical foam everywhere, and the acrid smell of electrical fires. I crawled toward what I hoped was the exit, feeling my way along the walls in the emergency lighting. Behind me, I could hear al-Mansouri and his people trying to salvage what they could from the damaged systems. The hallway was full of smoke and panicking office workers heading for the emergency stairs. I joined the crowd of evacuees, just another businessman fleeing a building emergency. Outside, fire trucks and police cars were arriving while people streamed out of the building. I spotted Marcus across the street, dressed as a construction worker and carrying equipment that looked legitimate, but probably contained enough explosives to level a city block. He caught my eye and nodded toward a van parked 2 blocks away. I made it to the van just as my phone rang. Sarah's number. "David, where are you? Al-Mansouri's people are looking everywhere for you. They think you're working with whoever attacked the building. I'm getting out of Dubai. If you're smart, you'll do the same. What about your family? Al-Mansouri's furious. He's given orders. I know, but I had to try to stop the assassinations." "Did you? Stop them, I mean." "I don't know yet, but I corrupted their communications and gave Marcus's team a chance to intercept the weapons. It might be enough." There was a long pause. "David, I'm sorry. For all of it. I never wanted things to go this far." "I know. Get out of Dubai, Sarah. Tonight. Al-Mansouri's going to need scapegoats for what happened, and you're an obvious target." After I hung up, Marcus briefed me on the situation. His team had used the building assault as a distraction while simultaneously intercepting the weapons shipment 60 nautical miles off the Somali coast. The cargo containers had indeed contained enough weapons to arm a small army, but they'd also contained something unexpected: chemical weapons. Not just conventional arms for assassination teams, but nerve agents intended for use against civilian populations in 3 African cities. "This wasn't just about killing 3 presidents," Marcus explained, as his team drove us toward a safe house outside Dubai. "Al-Mansouri was planning to wipe out thousands of people and blame it on tribal conflicts, make it look like ethnic violence instead of coordinated terrorism. The scope of the planned atrocity was staggering. If we hadn't stopped the weapons shipment, not only would 3 African leaders have been murdered, but entire city districts would have been poisoned with chemical weapons. Tens of thousands of innocent people would have died." "What about the assassination teams?" I asked. "With their communications disrupted and no weapons delivery, will they still attempt the attacks?" "Unknown. But we've passed intelligence about their planned targets to local security forces in all 3 countries. The African leaders have been moved to secure locations until the threat passes." That evening, while hiding in the safe house, I received confirmation that my family had been moved from their supposed protective custody, not by Al-Mansouri's people as I'd feared, but by a CIA extraction team that Sarah had secretly contacted before the building assault. My sister and her kids were now in an actual safe location, protected by people who answered to my agency instead of to arms dealers and terrorists. The operation had succeeded, but at enormous cost. My 3-year deep cover mission was blown. Al-Mansouri's organization knew CIA had been infiltrating their operation. Sarah's career was over, and she'd probably face prosecution for treason. I'd burned multiple intelligence assets and revealed classified information to hostile forces. But 3 African presidents were still alive. Thousands of innocent civilians hadn't been poisoned with chemical weapons, and a major arms-dealing network had been severely disrupted, even if not completely destroyed. 2 weeks later, I was back in the United States undergoing extensive debriefing at CIA headquarters. The intelligence I'd provided about the penetration of our security systems led to a comprehensive review of personnel and procedures. 3 other compromised agents were identified and quietly removed from sensitive positions. The full extent of Al-Mansouri's intelligence network was mapped and systematically dismantled. Al-Mansouri himself had disappeared, probably to a country without an extradition treaty with the United States. But Interpol had issued warrants for his arrest, and his financial assets in multiple countries had been frozen. His organization would survive, but it would take years to rebuild their capabilities and trust networks. Sarah was offered a plea agreement in exchange for her full cooperation in identifying other compromised agents and operations. She'd serve 2 years in minimum security prison, then enter witness protection with a new identity. Not the outcome any of us had wanted, but better than life in prison for treason. My family was relocated under new identities to a small town in Colorado, where my sister could continue her nursing career and her kids could attend school without fear. I visited them once every few months, always carefully checking for any signs of surveillance or threats. The African summit proceeded as planned, with enhanced security that successfully prevented any attacks. 3 weeks later, the leaders signed agreements that strengthened economic and security cooperation between their countries and the United States. The stability that Al-Mansouri had tried to destroy through violence was instead achieved through diplomacy. Marcus's private security company received a substantial contract to provide ongoing protection for key infrastructure in all 3 African countries. His team's success in intercepting the weapons shipment had impressed both American and African officials, leading to expanded opportunities for legitimate security work instead of covert operations. 6 months after the Dubai operation, I was assigned to a desk job at CIA headquarters, analyzing intelligence instead of gathering it in the field. The work was safer, but less satisfying than undercover operations. However, it allowed me to help identify and prevent similar threats before they required desperate field interventions. Sometimes I wondered if Al-Mansouri would eventually resurface with a new organization and renewed determination to profit from chaos and violence. The world of international arms dealing and terrorism was like cutting heads off a hydra. Destroy one network, and 2 more would eventually grow to replace it. But I'd learned something important during those desperate days in Dubai. When faced with an impossible choice between personal loyalty and professional duty, between protecting family and protecting strangers, the answer wasn't to choose one over the other. The answer was to find a third option that honored both obligations, even if it required risking everything to achieve it. 3 African presidents still governed their countries because I'd been willing to betray my own agency to gain access to a terrorist network. Thousands of innocent civilians continued their lives because my family's safety had motivated me to take risks I'd never have taken for abstract principles alone. Sometimes the most moral choice is the one that looks most immoral to outside observers. And sometimes saving the world requires being willing to damn yourself in the process. That's the burden that intelligence operatives carry, and the price of keeping ordinary people safe from threats they'll never know existed. That's it for today. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Like and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.